was that speech to? Was it for the U.S. citizens back home so they get him reelected, or was it for the participants of Davos?
I think it was for several different constituencies. I think here's somebody who is having the impeachment process start with the trial today, and I think this was a speech to basically say, I think we need some perspective, and let's look at what's happened under this administration. And I think that's not just for domestic consumption. I think it's meant to be heard in a broader context.
Could the U.S.-China Phase 1 deal have been signed 12 months ago?
It would have been if it could have been, but it couldn't have been done. And you know, part of the issue on the trade agreement, Francine, is that you know you need two countries, and each country has its own politics, and China is not a monolithic country in that sense. They have their hardliners, they have their reformers, and what's happened over the last, it's actually been 3 years that the U.S. and China have been discussing changes in trade, that it takes a while for a country that's got a very particular system like China to basically make a decision to start changing the system that's been very successful for them. So I think that the fact that a Phase 1 deal was done meant that both parts in China have come together, along with the U.S. side, which itself had ambitions that ranged from exceptionally comprehensive to not so much so. And so everybody met in the middle.
Steve Schwarzman with us with Blackstone, our chief executive officer. And I might point out, author, the Belvedere Hotel is the ancient hotel here. It's where you came years ago if you were have with the tuberculosis treatment and all. There's a wonderful photograph of Robert Louis Stevenson in the background of that. And to get to the Robert...
The Thomas Mann, the Magic Mountain.
The Thomas Mann, the Magic Mountain. And to get to those photographs of Robert Louis Stevenson, you've got to walk through the lobby in the bookstore known as the Stephen Schwarzman bookstore as well. How are book sales here in Davos?
Well, you know, actually, we're giving them away.
Oh, you're giving them away?
So this is a new low.
That sounds like private equity. Is this your idea over here? You let him give away books? There goes the profit margin.
Well, they wouldn't let us sell them,
okay.
And I wanted people to read them. Okay, so it's interesting, Tom. This morning I was at something at 7 o'clock. 4 or 5 people walked up, said, "Could you please sign my book? You know, I just picked it up. I'm excited to read it."
Has Tim Cook or Jeff Bezos read your book? Have you run into Tim Cook or Jeff Bezos about the Schwartzman theme?
Well, it's interesting. I saw Jeff before the book was published, and I said, "Jeff, here's what I'm doing. Here's the theme. Could you be helpful with Amazon?" And he said, "Sure, send it to me, and we'll take care of it."
This is so important, Steve. I want to make this point. I went down to the offices of Jeff Winter's LinkedIn the other day at the Empire State Building, and you're stuck in traffic, and you look over, and to your right as you go down Fifth Avenue is the Schwartzman Library, the New York Public Library. You, more than anybody in America, know the new technology of Cook and Bezos versus the old technology of what you've donated millions of dollars to. What is the focus of technology that you see right now? Is it a benefit to Americans, or all of the tension of this election and all? Is it because they're technological haves and there are too many technological have-nots?
Well, we've got to get everybody to be a technological have. Technology is benefiting America in an enormous number of ways. For example, you know, you take your smartphone. You know, you two would be lost without that, as would I.
We're also lost with it, but that's Steve, a whole other conversation.
Steve, I want to go back. There's that track photo of you running around doing a 3-minute mile a few years ago. I want to go back long ago and far away. You supported this president because the Republicans had the vision with Democrats to build the interstate highway system in the 50s. Can't you help the president support an interstate highway of technology in America where we take the whole country and get all this fixed?
I think that there is enormous need, and it's bipartisan, Tom, that, you know, Chuck Schumer, for example, along with many people in Congress, want to make a major step forward, as does the administration, in terms of providing money for AI and what may be even more consequential, quantum, in the future. And you know, the universities that are doing this advanced research, the companies who are sort of the American flagship carriers in technology, all want more research funds to increase competitiveness. Now, this really will end up benefiting regular people, whether it's with diagnoses of illnesses with much more reliability, development of drugs which could end up being half the cost as a result of it, huge breakthroughs in education where you'll be able to instruct students of all different types of backgrounds. So technology has got some enormous benefits.
What's the biggest unknown for 2020 for the markets? Is it the U.S. election? Is it global growth? Or is it geopolitics?
Well, it's not global growth. I think global growth will continue. The biggest risk, you know, for markets are two types of things. One is U.S. domestic politics, and the second is the black swan effects that can happen. I mean, we just had an incident, for example, in Iraq. I was watching television. Almost everyone was declaring World War III starting. They all happened to be wrong, but if they were right, and the Straits of Hormuz were closed, and we ended up, you know, with a huge dislocation, you could get thrown accidentally into a slow growth to recession.
But it's quite amazing how the market quickly discounted. Once there was no immediate threat of war, they kind of moved on. We have asset prices really priced to perfection. So how do the two kind of match up?
Well, usually perfection doesn't last. And, you know, this has been an amazing run. Usually you expect some type of adjustment. But if we don't have a really discontinuous event with U.S. politics, and we avoid the kinds of major international type of risks, geopolitical risks, I think we'll go on with variability up and down over today's levels.
Steve, I got time for one more question because I know you're going off to go skiing on this perfect day in Davos. I'm going to ask you the same question I would ask Mr. Rubenstein and the others. Richard Edelman's come out with a study that would be the president leaving right now, those sirens you hear in the background. Richard Edelman's come out with a study of how capitalism is removed from so many people in America. Is it time for private equity to change its tax treatment that's been in place over the years?
Well, I leave that one, Tom, to the political people, every one of whom has their own unique solution for the ills of the world. What I'd say is part of the Edelman study also had to do with overall trust in institutions. And I think there's a real need to address what's going wrong with our society, where so many people question almost every institution in society.
How much pressure are you feeling? One final question, because we couldn't hear Tom's question, so it was a lost question. It doesn't count. How much pressure are you feeling from investors to put cash to use? We
don't have that kind of pressure.
They don't want you to go in now?
We've invested a lot of money over the years. When prices are high, you try and invest less. When they're low, you try to invest more. We sell a lot of things when prices are high. We try and find things. It's harder.
Well, I got to make some news here, Steve. Are you buying or selling right now? I mean, the market down 30,000. Watch here. We got to go here. The ski lift is waiting for Mr. Schwartzman. But quickly, are you buying or selling?
We do both, Tom.
We do both. Get off the stage. I'm trying to get an answer on Steve Schwarzman. Unplug him and throw him out of here right now. What is he, an economist? On the one hand, and on the other hand, Steve Schwarzman, thank you so much.